The alarm screamed through the metal walls of the medical lab, making the human soldier bolt upright from the examination bed. He wasn't supposed to be awake yet. He wasn't even supposed to be conscious until the next morning. But something was wrong. His body felt heavier, tighter, like pressure building up inside his chest and neck. Something had gone off script. The young alien girl who stood frozen in the corner looked horrified. Her skin was a glowing blue, and her silver hair clung to her temples with sweat. She had been the one holding the injector. The one who leaned over him and whispered, "No one can know." Now her hands were over her mouth, and her wide eyes stared at the man like he was about to explode. The serum was meant for healing, or that's what the humans had been told. It was supposed to help their soldiers recover from the chemical burns caused by the alien fire mist. But what she had just injected into his bloodstream wasn't the healing compound. It was something else, something experimental, something not cleared for use even in her own species. The man, Commander Eric Vale, grunted and twisted his body off the table. He could feel his muscles pulling tight under his skin, veins expanding as though his body was being filled with something denser than blood. His vision sharpened. His hearing became too loud. He could hear the technicians' footfalls outside. The steel doors. His body was becoming something it wasn't before. "Where's the real serum?" he asked, voice deeper than usual. The girl flinched. She was no ordinary alien medic. Her name was Valera, daughter of the Zanari Council's head scientist. She wasn't even authorized to touch a human, let alone inject one. Yet here she was, her eyes darting between the door and Eric like a terrified child who had broken the wrong machine. "I had no choice," she whispered. "They were going to send you back to Earth broken. You saved me during the fire breach. I owed you," she said, breathing hard. "But this one, it wasn't supposed to change your body like this. It's part of something else." "Something hidden," she admitted. Eric's back arched as another wave of heat surged through his body. He caught his reflection in the steel tray nearby. His eyes were glowing faintly. His chest seemed broader. Something beneath the sheet shifted in a way that made him freeze in confusion. Then he looked back at her. She was trembling, like she was afraid not of what he would do, but what others would do if they found out. The door slammed open. Two Zanari guards burst into the room, armed with plasma spears. They didn't ask questions. They aimed at Eric and stepped forward. Valera moved fast. She placed herself between the guards and the human, shouting something in her language. The guards paused for only a second, then lowered their weapons slightly, confused by her sudden defiance. Eric stood behind her, still dazed. Whatever she had done, it wasn't just physical. His brain felt clearer, faster. He could sense the guards' tension. He could see their small movements before they made them. He had instincts he never had before. It wasn't human anymore. Not completely. He stepped beside her, not behind. "What exactly did you inject me with?" he asked. Valera looked at him with a mix of shame and desperation. "It was a prototype enhancer," she said. "It changes your biology, blends Zanari adaptability with human strength. It was meant for a war that never came. Now it's in you. And it's unstable," she said with a tremble. The guards raised their weapons again. They were receiving orders from outside through their earpieces. Eric could feel the tension rising in the room. The guards weren't here to help. They were here to contain or kill. Valera's hand grabbed his wrist. "We have to run. Now," she whispered. Eric didn't argue. He grabbed the nearest equipment tray and hurled it at the lights above, plunging the room into flickering sparks. Valera pulled him toward the back hatch. As they ducked behind machinery and slipped through the emergency corridor, alarms began. Blaring again, this time not for a breach, but for a fugitive extraction. Whatever was in his body now, whatever she had put into him. It wasn't going to stay secret for long. Asterisk. Valera's breath was sharp and fast as she ran ahead of him through the metal corridor, her boots clanging against the grated floor. The emergency lights flashed red across her pale blue skin. Behind them, the heavy doors were closing one by one as the lockdown activated. Her fingers slid across a hidden panel near the wall, and a small hatch opened to reveal a dark maintenance tunnel. Eric hesitated only a moment before crawling in behind her. The tunnel was narrow and hot. His body scraped against the walls, which seemed even tighter now. Whatever the serum had done, it hadn't stopped changing him. His skin felt thicker, tougher. His arms moved with strength he didn't remember having, but none of it felt wrong. It felt powerful, controlled, too controlled. Valera crawled fast, twisting through the shaft like she had used it before. She had planned this. Maybe not all of it, but enough to know where to run. Eric wasn't sure if he could trust her, but right now, she was the only one not trying to shoot him. The tunnel ended in a vent that opened above a storage bay. She motioned for him to wait while she checked below. She dropped quietly and looked around. The bay was empty, lined with stacked supply crates and machines waiting to be shipped. She waved him down. Eric dropped beside her, landing on his feet harder than expected. The metal creaked beneath him. He was heavier now, stronger. She noticed it too. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't speak about it. They moved between crates until they reached a smaller side room with a locking console. Valera scanned her hand, then entered a hidden code. The door opened into a private lab, smaller and older than the one before. There were no cameras, no guards, just old tech glowing softly, and vials of faded serum lined on the shelves. This was her lab. Her secret lab. Eric sat down heavily on the examination chair. His breathing was normal, but everything in his body felt charged. Like something inside was waiting. He looked at her. "How long do I have before this thing inside me gets worse?" he asked. Valera turned away, checking the screen, her fingers shaking slightly. "I don't know," she answered quietly. It wasn't supposed to go into a human. "Ever," she admitted. She walked over and held up a scanner, moving it slowly over his chest and neck. The device beeped in different tones as it collected data. Her eyes moved fast across the display. Eric stayed still. "You're changing." "At the cellular level," she said. "But not just change. Your body is stabilizing it. Adapting," she added with a whisper. "You weren't supposed to be able to," she said with wonder. Eric looked down at his hands. The skin was normal but harder, like armor beneath the surface. He clenched his fist. The strength felt unnatural. Then he noticed something else. His heartbeat was slower, but stronger. He wasn't tired, he wasn't weak. He felt awake in every part of his body. Even his senses were sharper. And yet the look on her face said this wasn't a gift. She backed away and placed the scanner down. "You weren't supposed to survive the injection," she said flatly. "The serum was unstable for our kind. That's why it was hidden. My father wanted to use it during the war, but it caused internal ruptures, mutations, madness. You should be dead." "But you're not," she said, barely blinking. Eric stood up and walked toward her. "Then why give it to me?" he asked. "Why risk everything?" Valera stepped back. "Because you saved me. And because the alternative was letting them break you apart for testing," she said. "This way you had a chance. Even if it was small," she said, holding his stare. Suddenly, a loud hiss echoed through the corridor outside. The door panel lit up with a warning. "They found us," Valera said. "They tracked my code," she whispered. Eric grabbed the table and flipped it on its side, using it as cover. She ran to the shelves, sweeping vials into a satchel. "We need to leave now," she said, fear rising in her voice. Eric didn't wait. He picked up a metal pole from the corner and held it tight. It felt light in his hands, too light. He opened the back door, leading into another tunnel that curved downwards. The emergency lights flickered again. Valera ran close behind him. Alarms started blaring across the upper floors. The entire facility was hunting them now. This time, they weren't running from a mistake. They were running from something they had become together. The tunnel led them into the lower service levels of the research complex. These halls were older, darker, and no longer used by staff. Thick pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping steam and water into shallow pools below. Eric kept his steps silent. He could hear Valera's breathing behind him, soft but quick. She was scared, but not weak. Her grip on the satchel was firm. They stopped near a junction where the corridor split into 3 paths. Eric raised his hand, motioning her to pause. He listened. The faint hum of boots echoed down the left tunnel. The guards were sweeping the levels below, moving fast. They had scanners and orders to kill. Valera looked at Eric, waiting for his lead. Eric pointed to the right tunnel, and they slipped into the shadows. His mind was calm, more focused than before. The serum hadn't just changed his body. It was sharpening his instincts. He remembered every corner, every escape route they passed. His memory was working like a map. Valera noticed it too. The way he moved, the way he made decisions without doubt. They reached a heavy access door with faded markings. Valera pressed a sequence on the panel. The door creaked open into a long-forgotten control room. The lights flickered weakly. Dust covered the consoles, but the screens still worked. Valera rushed to the center panel and began typing. "This is where I used to monitor the old test sites. We can find a path out from here," she said. Eric stood by the door, listening. His enhanced hearing picked up something faint. Voices 2 floors above. They were closing in. He turned back to her. "How long until they break through this section?" he asked. Valera didn't look up. "Less than 10 minutes. Maybe less if they trace my hand codes," she said. "But I found something. There's an old hangar at the base. Unused. Still powered," she added. Eric walked over and looked at the screen. A layout of the complex blinked in blue and white. The hangar was deep underground, past the fusion coolant tanks. "Dangerous but reachable. We go there," he said. "If it's powered, there's a way out," he added. Valera nodded. "There might be an old shuttle. I've never seen it fly, but I kept the systems clean," she said. They left the room and moved quickly through the lower tunnels. Each step brought them closer to the heat of the reactor level. The walls grew warmer. Steam hissed from cracked vents. Eric's body absorbed the heat without slowing. Valera wiped sweat from her brow, but he looked unaffected. She watched him in silence, thinking about what he was becoming. As they passed a sealed door, they heard footsteps. A squad of guards entered from the far end, weapons ready. Eric didn't wait. He rushed forward, faster than the guards could aim. He grabbed the nearest one and slammed him into the wall. The others fired, but Eric ducked low and disarmed them in seconds. He moved like a weapon, unstoppable and cold. Valera stared, shocked by the speed and strength. The guards were unconscious in a pile. None were dead, but their armor was broken. Eric looked back at her. "Keep moving," he said. "They'll send more." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on him. He was changing faster now, not just stronger, but colder, more tactical, less human. They reached the hangar access lift and forced it open. The platform shook as it dropped into the dark. Below, the hangar lights flickered on, revealing a long silver shuttle, half covered in dust and cables. Valera smiled faintly. "It's still here." "I didn't think it would be," she said. Eric stepped off the lift first, scanning the room for movement. It was clear. For now, they moved toward the shuttle. Valera ran diagnostics on the panel. The engines were cold, but alive. She powered them slowly, afraid to trigger any alarms. "It's not meant for humans," she warned. "You'll need to adjust inside." "The cabin was made for our physiology," she said. Eric didn't hesitate. "I'll manage," he replied. Suddenly the wall behind them exploded inward. More guards poured in, followed by a tall figure in red armor. Valera gasped. "That's Director Toven," she said. "My father's enforcer. He knows what I did," she added. Eric stepped in front of her. His veins glowed faintly beneath the skin. He wasn't going to run this time. Not anymore. What began as a mistake was now a declaration. He wasn't just a test subject. He was a threat they couldn't ignore. Director. Toven stepped into the hangar with slow, heavy footsteps. His red armor gleamed under the flickering lights, and the soldiers behind him stood silent, waiting for his command. His glowing eyes locked on Eric, scanning the human from head to toe. Then he spoke, voice sharp and cold. "You should not exist," he said without emotion. Valera stood behind Eric, clutching the side panel of the shuttle. Her hands trembled, but she didn't back away. "He's not your property," she said, trying to sound brave. Toven ignored her. His attention never left Eric. "You are a mistake," he said. "A mistake that cannot leave this facility." He added calmly. Eric felt the pressure rising in his chest again, but it was no longer fear. It was control, purpose. The serum had changed something deep inside. His thoughts were sharper. His body responded before he could think. He stepped forward, placing himself fully between Valera and the soldiers. "Then come fix your mistake," he said. Without a signal, the guards moved. Plasma bolts filled the air. Eric dodged with speed that seemed impossible. He grabbed one of the crates and hurled it like a weapon, knocking 3 soldiers to the ground. The others scattered, but Eric was already on them, his fists hitting harder than steel. The sounds of metal clashing echoed through the hangar. Toven raised his arm and fired a shockwave from his gauntlet. It slammed into Eric, sending him flying across the floor. Valera screamed and ran toward him, but Eric rolled and rose without hesitation. A thin trail of blood touched his lip, but he smiled. It was the first time he felt pain since the serum. It reminded him he was still human. "You are not the future," Toven growled, stepping forward. "You are the end of balance. You are the infection," he said with fury. Eric wiped the blood and stood tall. "Then maybe it's time for your balance to break," he answered, his voice deep and steady. Toven charged, his fists coated in electric fire. Eric met him head-on. The two clashed in the center of the hangar, sending waves of power through the walls. The shuttle trembled. Valera ducked behind cover, watching the man she thought would die now match a warrior bred for war. Her eyes were wide with disbelief and something more hope. Eric blocked the next blow and countered with a punch that cracked Toven's chest plate. Sparks flew. The director stumbled, then activated his boosters, lifting into the air. He slammed down with force that shattered the floor. Eric was pushed back but not down. His feet dug into the ground, his arms raised. He didn't fall. Valera ran to the shuttle console and activated the engines. They rumbled to life, their glow casting blue light across the hangar. "Eric," she shouted, "we have to go." He looked at her, then at Toven, who stood again with fury in his glowing eyes. Eric didn't want to leave the fight unfinished, but he knew she was right. This wasn't the place to win. It was the place to escape. Eric charged one last time, slamming into Toven with all his strength. The director flew back, crashing into a wall of crates. Before he could rise, Eric ran to the shuttle and jumped inside. Valera sealed the hatch. The engine screamed. The ship shook as the hangar doors opened. Outside, the storm winds howled across the mountains. The shuttle lifted slowly, then blasted forward, leaving behind the smoke and chaos. Valera guided the controls while Eric collapsed into the passenger seat. His body throbbed with power and pain. He looked at her. She was breathing hard, her face streaked with sweat, but she was smiling. You shouldn't have survived that, she said quietly. Eric closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. But I did, he replied. Now what? He asked. Valera looked ahead. Now we run. But not forever. We'll find answers. I'll fix this, she said. Eric nodded. But deep inside, he knew something was wrong. His body was still changing. His strength wasn't stable, and the serum wasn't finished. Whatever had started in that lab was far from over. The storm clouds parted as the shuttle vanished into the sky. Behind them, the facility burned in silence. The shuttle sliced through the upper atmosphere as the planet below faded into a swirling mass of clouds and light. Valera kept her hands steady on the controls, eyes focused forward. Eric sat beside her, chest rising slowly, the pain in his. Muscles growing sharper. He didn't show it, but she could see the tension in his jaw. His body was changing again. For a while, neither of them spoke. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Valera finally turned to him. You need medical help, she said. Eric shook his head. There's no one I can trust now, he answered. Valera sighed. Then we need to go dark, off-grid. Somewhere they won't find us, she said. Eric nodded without hesitation. They landed on a moon just outside the Trillis Belt, a forgotten mining station orbiting a gas giant. The place had been abandoned for years, but Valera knew the codes. She led Eric into the shadows of the empty outpost, through broken hallways and dust-filled rooms, until they reached a locked chamber deep underground. This was her real sanctuary. The lab was small but filled with old equipment, enough to monitor his vitals and track the serum's effects. Eric sat on the exam bed while Valera scanned him again. Her brow furrowed as she looked at the results. Your cells are no longer human. They're rewriting faster than before, she said, and the serum is mutating. Adapting to you, she added. Eric looked at his hands. His skin still looked normal, but the strength was there. The speed. The clarity in his thoughts. But now there was something new. A pressure in his spine. A heat in his chest. Like something inside was growing, not just changing him, but preparing for something bigger. He didn't understand it, but he could feel it. Valera stepped back from the scanner, chewing her lip. There's more, she said. You're nervous. System is forming secondary pathways. They're not just Zenary. They single quotes read ... unknown, she said slowly. You're evolving beyond both our species, she added. Eric didn't speak. He didn't need to. He already knew he wasn't the same man who entered the Zenari lab weeks ago. The next day, Valera upgraded the lab's shieldings and jammed all off-world signals. They couldn't risk being tracked. Eric helped her reinforce the doors and install heat traps to block scanners. Every movement he made was smooth, fast, without effort. He could lift metal crates with one hand, run across the tunnels without tiring. His body was now a weapon, but even he wasn't sure what kind. That night, while Valera slept, Eric stood outside on the observation deck, watching the stars. The air was cold, but it didn't bother him. His mind kept returning to Tovin's words. You are the infection. What if he was? What if whatever was growing inside him wasn't just powerful, but dangerous? He clenched his fists. He didn't want to become something he couldn't control. The door behind him opened softly. Valera stepped out, arms wrapped in a blanket. She walked beside him, looking at the stars. You're afraid it's changing who you are, she said. Eric nodded. It already has, he answered. She placed a hand on his shoulder. But it hasn't taken your choices. Not yet, she said. You still decide what you do with the power, she added. Eric looked at her. Her eyes were tired but calm. She hadn't left his side since the lab. She risked her life, betrayed her people, all to save him. And still, she believed he could stay human in the middle of this storm. He didn't know if she was right. But her voice grounded him, even when everything else felt like slipping away. Suddenly, the station lights blinked. A silent alarm triggered in the control room. Valera ran inside, checked the monitor, and gasped. "They found us," she said. A stealth drone pinged the station. "It's Toven. He's alive," she said with dread. Eric stepped beside her. "Then we finish this before he brings more," he said. Valera opened a hidden case below the console, revealing a pulse rifle and 3 energy cores. "If we stay, we fight. If we leave, they'll chase us across every system," she said. Eric took the weapon and looked at her. "Then we fight," he said. "But this time, I choose the terms," he added. The lights flickered again. This time from the docking bay below. Toven wasn't just coming for revenge. He was coming to claim what he believed belonged to him. Asterisk. The floor vibrated beneath their feet as the docking clamps engaged. The enemy ship had landed. Valera checked the surveillance feed on the monitor. A sleek black vessel with red markings had docked silently against the outer ring. It was smaller than Toven's usual cruiser. He didn't bring an army this time. He brought something faster, quieter, and likely deadlier. Eric loaded the energy core into the pulse rifle. His hands moved smoothly, every motion exact. He didn't feel fear, only focus. His body responded with power he still wasn't fully used to. The changes weren't done. He could feel his spine tighten and loosen, like his muscles were rewriting themselves each time he moved. But the pain was gone. It was replaced by control. Valera handed him a smaller sidearm and adjusted the strap on her vest. "If he's here alone, it means he plans to end this quickly," she said. "No backup, just elimination," she added. Eric nodded. "Then we stop it before he starts," he said. "I won't let him take you. Or this," he added as he tapped his chest. They moved through the tunnels of the abandoned station, their footsteps light, weapons ready. The walls were dark and silent, dust floating in the air. Every few meters, Valera paused to check the sensor. It showed a single heat signature approaching from the opposite corridor. Toven was moving slowly, as if he wanted them to see him coming. Eric motioned for her to stay behind. He walked forward, his rifle ready, senses sharp. The moment he stepped into the large central chamber, Toven was already waiting. His armor had changed. It was sleeker, lined with glowing red veins pulsing with energy. He no longer carried traditional weapons. His hands glowed with raw power. "You ran too far," Toven said, stepping forward. "The galaxy is not yours to rewrite. This hybrid abomination will not be allowed," he declared. Eric didn't blink. "You tried to erase what you feared," he replied. "But now it's stronger, smarter, and it remembers," he added. Toven's face twitched with anger. The first strike came fast. Toven launched forward, fist swinging in a wide arc. Eric blocked it with his arm, the impact cracking the floor. They moved like blurs across the chamber, each blow shaking the walls. Valera watched from behind a pillar, her breath held tight. She had seen power before, but nothing like this. Eric wasn't just matching Toven, he was overpowering him. But Toven adapted. His armor began to shift, thin tendrils rising from his back, striking at Eric with whip-like speed. One wrapped around Eric's arm, another on his leg. Toven pulled hard, slamming Eric into the wall. Eric roared and pushed back, ripping free. The tendrils sparked and retreated. Eric's chest glowed faintly now, the serum reacting to the threat. "You were never meant to live," Toven shouted. "You are a flaw in both species," he growled. Eric stood tall, blood trickling down his forehead. "Then I'll be the flaw that breaks your system," he replied. He charged again, this time faster, and slammed Toven into the ground with a force that shattered the tiles. Valera rushed forward, firing her sidearm at the weak points in Toven's armor. The shot sparked, disrupting the flow of energy in his suit. Toven screamed and pushed her back with a shockwave. She hit the wall hard, gasping. Eric's eyes glowed brighter. He moved with fury, fists slamming into the armor until cracks formed. Then he drove his hand into the power core at Tovin's chest. Tovin froze, energy bursting from his back. Eric pulled his hand away and stepped back as the armor collapsed. Tovin's body hit the ground, smoke rising from the suit. Valera crawled over and checked his pulse. Nothing. He was gone. Eric stood over the body, breathing hard. The glow in his chest dimmed slowly. For the first time in days, the silence felt real. Eric dropped the rifle and helped Valera to her feet. She smiled, weakly, eyes wet. "You did it," she said. "We did it," he replied. He looked down at his hands, then at her. "But I don't know what I am anymore," he added. Valera took his hand and placed it against her chest. "You're still human where it matters," she said. "And whatever you've become, we'll figure it out together," she promised. Eric looked into her eyes and nodded. The threat was gone. But the journey had only just begun. The wind outside the old station had shifted. The gas giant loomed above the moon's surface, swirling with golden storms that never touched the ground. Eric stood near the edge of the landing platform, his gaze focused on the sky. His body felt calm for the first time since the serum entered his veins. Tovin was gone, but the effects of the serum were not. Valera stepped beside him, holding a small scanner. She had run tests all night after the battle. The results were unlike anything she had ever seen. Eric's body was no longer in flux. The mutation had stopped. His cells had stabilized. But they were not returning to human. They were not returning to Zanari. They had created something new. Eric looked at the readings without speaking. He wasn't afraid anymore. He had already accepted that he would never be what he was before. What mattered now was what he chose to become. He turned to Valera. "Is it safe now?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Safe for you," she said. "But not for those who would try to copy it," she added. Valera had locked away the remaining data from her father's lab. The serum formula, the test logs, everything had been encrypted and sealed. She and Eric agreed it would never be used again. Not by humans. Not by Zanari. Not by anyone. The risk was too great. It had nearly destroyed them both. They decided to leave the moon behind. There was nothing left to hide from, and nothing left to fear. The shuttle was repaired and fueled, ready to fly. But their destination was not Earth, and not the Zanari worlds either. They were going to a system beyond the neutral zones. A place where no one watched and no one ruled. Eric wanted to find out what his new body could do without the threat of war. Valera wanted to understand how it had merged two species into one. Together, they planned to create a space where knowledge and peace could exist, where no government controlled evolution. It was a dream neither of them had before, but now it gave them purpose. As they lifted off from the station, the stars spread wide before them. Valera piloted smoothly, her fingers dancing across the controls. Eric sat beside her, watching the stars shift. He could feel every vibration in the ship. His senses were sharp but steady, no more sudden growth. No more pain. Just quiet strength under control. They passed through a radiation belt without needing shields. Eric's skin absorbed the energy and dispersed it harmlessly. Valera laughed when she saw the readings. "You're not just surviving space," she said. "You're becoming part of it," she added. Eric smiled and leaned back in his seat. "Maybe I was meant to," he replied. After several hours, they reached a quiet moon with breathable air and ancient ruins. The locals had vanished centuries ago, leaving behind stone towers and technology buried in the sand. Valera scanned the area and found energy signals deep underground. They set up a temporary camp inside the largest structure. Inside the ruins, They found forgotten machines and strange markings neither of them recognized. Eric placed his hand on one of the control panels. The device lit up instantly. Valera stepped back in awe. It responded to you, she said. Eric nodded slowly. Maybe it recognizes what I've become, he answered. They spent weeks exploring the site, collecting samples, studying the machines. Eric could activate systems with his presence alone. Some of the devices even spoke in a language he understood, though he had never heard it before. Valera believed the serum had unlocked more than strength. It had awakened something ancient buried in their DNA. Together, they wrote everything down. Not to spread it, but to protect it. Eric had become a bridge between species, a living link to a forgotten time. And Valera, the one who gave him the wrong serum, had also given him a new path. A mistake that became a miracle. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the ridge, Eric stood outside their shelter, watching the sky. Valera joined him, her hand sliding into his. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't injected you? She asked. Eric looked at her and smiled. Then I would still be broken, he said. And I wouldn't have met the one who fixed me, he added. Their journey had started with a mistake, born in fear. But it ended with hope, built on trust. And in the silence of the stars, the galaxy turned, unaware that its future now rested in the hands of something entirely new.